but you're going nowhere. Don't blame me for what you've done, because I know that you were having fun.
Welcome to the Clarified Realty Podcast, exposing the real estate secrets your agent doesn't want you to know. Here's your host, Tom Clary.
Don't you just walk away. That's when I'll say.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Clarified Realty Podcast. My name is Tom Clary, and I'm your host. I'm a licensed real estate agent here in the beautiful state of California, Los Angeles to be exact. Our good friend and co-host Ron Bruno will not be joining us today. He's actually in Dallas, Texas right now. He's assisting his wife with a technology ball event. So instead of some news this week, we're going to dive right into today's conversation. This week, I'm talking to Sandy Rosenholz of Senior Resources Incorporated. Sandy and I have known each other for quite a while now, about 4 or so years, probably maybe a little bit less than that. He's a senior care advisor here in Los Angeles and Southern California. His job is to bring independent, assisted memory care, hospice, and in-home care options to seniors and their families. He really helps folks that are going through some really tough times by helping give them options about where their elderly parents, grandparents, etc., can transition and find senior living communities that are the best fit for them. He's an expert in every sense of the word about this, and I'm so happy to have him on the podcast with us. Sandy, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah. So we ask this question of every single person who comes in here the first time: where the hell have you been, and how the hell did you get here?
That's a great question. I was born in New York, and I moved out here in 1974, and to be in the pet supply industry. And
that's right. You started with pet supplies.
Pet supplies, yes.
Explain that. What was that kind of like?
I was a manufacturer's representative, and I worked for different companies and sold products all over 11 Western states, and eventually became a manufacturer and an importer. So I had a very successful career. But it turns out my uncle had moved to Mexico, and I started taking care of him. Yeah. And I started helping him pay his bills. And when he needed medical care, I started bringing him back to the United States to get care. And lo and behold, 40 years later, that was like the beginning of how I ended up in senior care, because I found out that was something.
So that was kind of the gateway in.
A gateway. I helped my aunt. I helped my mother-in-law, my mother, a cousin. I literally cut my teeth. Even before I was in the senior care business, I was actually helping my family discover the right solutions.
Well, it's kind of interesting that when I thought this conversation was going to take a different kind of path here, but I want to stop here for one moment. That you, with your family, your own family, you kind of took the lead on these circumstances. I mean, are you that kind of nurturing kind of type? I mean, is that something that you think that you're like? Why was it you that kind of stood up?
That's a great question. I'm not sure why it was me, but I think I believe that most family, if there's siblings, most family, one or two step up, and some others don't. Yeah. Sometimes it's not a sibling. Sometimes it could be a grandchild. Yeah. Sometimes it could be a cousin or a niece, right, or a nephew. I just happened to be the one. I don't think I did it by myself. I had a lot of help with my brother and sister, but I think initially some of that, what was done, I did it. So
right. And probably as you started moving down that path, you started getting more knowledge, and of course you start becoming more of an expert at it, because in the family, it's right. Ask Sandy. He went through with. Again,
I wasn't doing it professionally. I was just helping him, and then I had retired, and I was bored. Yeah. And I couldn't play enough golf and go to enough lunches. And eventually a friend asked me to go into the senior care business. Right. And he knew of my story. He knew that I had been taking care of families. Right. And he knew I was pretty good with people. So he said, just come in and come work with me. And I started work with him. And then.
So it started off with someone else, though.
I went to work for a franchise and cut my teeth. And a year later, circumstances turned out that I ended up starting my own business, and that's where I am today. So it's about 7 years.
Right. Yeah. So let's I think start the conversation off with sort of getting an idea of what the first point of contact is kind of like when someone is calling you, hey, I've got this situation. Is it usually like you're getting calls from the family, or is it that you're getting calls from the person who has to, find a place to go, or
It's a great question. I think it's a mirage or a myriad of answers. I just literally 5 minutes ago got a phone call.
Yeah.
The lady said she needed help for her friend, and she was giving me the number from a friend of another friend that knew I was in the senior care business. So
wow.
It's a lot of referrals going on on the side, but many times it's the children or whoever's in charge. Sometimes it's a husband with a wife, or a wife with a husband, or maybe it's the actual person themselves.
So it does actually happen that the person calls you and says,
absolutely,
hey, I'm thinking I can't really handle being at home anymore.
Absolutely, yeah.
What's generally the dynamic like with the family? I mean, is it all over the map as well?
It's kind of all over the map, but one of the things that I've learned is that we, as a group of human beings, families, we love each other, and we're good at being parents or children or brothers and sisters. We're not really good at being caregivers. Yeah. And sometimes it's difficult. It's difficult.
Why do you think that is?
I think it's because mom and dad took care of us when we were little, and we think it's unnatural, maybe.
It's sort of disconcerting, isn't it?
That we're now taking care of them.
Yeah.
And so there's an issue there many times,
Yeah. So, okay, but the dynamics that is it usually, you kind of said that earlier, but that there's usually someone who kind of comes in and takes the lead. I mean, is that something that's usual?
There's usually one person in the family that takes the lead, but many times there isn't. Maybe there may be 5 children involved, and you get 5 different opinions of what should happen. So that's where you have to be a little bit of a politician working it out with the family.
You're playing like referee.
And many times I am like a lawyer. I don't want to call myself a lawyer, but many times I'm trying to get 2 parties to agree on a little situation just to get them moving in the right direction.
Right.
Mediator. I don't think I would call myself a lawyer, but a mediator.
Someone who brings people together, not necessarily.
Exactly. So,
yeah. So when someone is calling you up, like what is that first phone call usually? Let's take it from let's go. I think there's 2 different ways here.
Right.
The first way is the person who calls you, who needs to find a new place.
Right.
What is that conversation usually like? What are you doing what kind of information are you getting from them? What kind of goals are you getting? What do you see that conversation usually being like?
Well, I think if, let's say a woman calls me, and usually it's a woman.
Really?
Men don't do this decision very well. But also at the age group that I'm taking care of, a lot of the men have already passed away.
Oh, okay.
So I may get a phone call from a widow, and that's where it starts. And she says, my husband died 2 years ago, and I'm lonely.
Right.
And I don't know what to do. And I said, fine, and then I'll just come see you and we'll talk about what we need to do.
Right.
And that's one kind of phone call.
Right.
Another phone call could be husband and wife. The husband calls me and says, I need help. I said, why do you need help? I can't lift my wife anymore out of her bed, and she can't walk anymore.
Yeah.
I need to get care in the home. So I said, let me come and talk to you. We'll sit down. We'll try to figure out what's going on.
Right.
Sometimes one or two of them has dementia.
Yeah.
And the other person doesn't even know how to deal with the dementia.
Right.
So I come in, I sit down with them, try to figure it all out and find the right solution. It's not necessarily moving somebody. Right. It's finding the right solution to make sure that they can live as happily as they can. Well, and they deserve that respect.
And that's something that I think that is fascinating about what you do. And when I first met Sandy, kind of getting a line, like when we first met, I was kind of like, well, what exactly is he doing? When I find out really what it is that you cover a lot of bases. I mean, it's not only about finding folks a place to go to should they need to go into a care home or some sort of thing like that and all that. But you're also assisting them with in-home care, right?
Correct.
If they need it. And you're also an amazing consultant just in terms of like, hey, I have this situation. How do I handle this kind of thing?
Right. Yeah. That's
Because
exactly
there's
true.
so many question marks that happen, and we'll get into that as we go a little bit deeper in this conversation. But what do you see yourself primarily as doing? Like, how do you define what you do?
I think I'm like a coach of a team.
Yeah.
I think I help the family get together, figure out what the right plan is, and then tell them which avenue to go with first or what to do. And I'll just use this as an example. About 2 weeks ago, I got called in on a client that was in the hospital and needed home care.
Yeah.
And when I finally got to the house, she was still in the hospital.
Okay.
And I didn't even meet the person.
Oh, wow.
But I also noticed that there was a broken window in the house, and there was a problem with the locks. And she also had medicines piled all the way up on her counters.
Wow.
Lots and lots of medicines.
Wow.
So I immediately, with permission of her lawyer, actually,
Right.
power of attorney,
Yeah.
I arranged for a locksmith, a plumber, and a geriatric care manager to come into the house. And by the time she got home, all the stuff was taken care of.
Right.
It was done properly, and then we could provide the right care for her. So yeah,
Yeah.
I'm always helping, trying to put an expert.
It's kind of a holistic approach to the whole situation.
trying to find the right expert for the right
Right.
solution. I mean, that's it. When you're selling a house, you don't call a plumber. You call a realtor.
Right, right.
A licensed realtor.
A licensed. You don't want the unlicensed kind. They tend to screw things up a bit. So let's go back to when. So let's say Joe Smith, he's 85 years old. It's getting to the point where he just knows that he needs to just, it's just getting too much to clean his house, to do whatever he needs to do. So Joe Smith calls you up and says, hey, Sandy, I need some help. What kind of information are you trying to get from him to kind of get that picture of where he's at?
In the initial conversation, I'm usually focusing more on the medical side.
Yeah.
Although I'm not a doctor by any means, but trying to find out where they are physically and mentally. And I try to find out what their real needs are. So in the case of Mr. Smith, he sounds like he just can't cook for himself anymore.
Right.
He can't stand up long enough to cook.
Right.
Which means he's either got to get a caregiver in the home or we have to move him.
Right.
Okay. And once I determine a little bit, then I just basically set up an appointment and said, let's sit down and talk about this in earnest. And when I go there, that's when I basically go through what I call maybe the 5 or 6 categories that I work with would be mental, physical, social, medical, finances, and living situation.
Right.
And living situation could be as simple as living in a 2-story home and having really bad legs.
Yeah.
That's a disaster waiting to happen.
Right.
Going up and down the stairs is a good time to fall. So we don't want that. That's the goal of a lot of care providers, not to let anyone fall.
Right.
Fall prevention is a big thing. And I do that on the first visit. Go in, go through the house and figure out what's good and what's wrong with any kind of fall prevention.
Absolutely. And it's funny, you mentioned social. And I think that's something that's so kind of, people don't even think about almost but when you think about it, it's so important because it's so easy to become kind of alienated from everybody, all alone. Their friends die away. It's just reality. And a lot of times these people are left all alone in a house someplace, even if they can get around. And sometimes that's a huge part of their lives that gets completely forgotten.
Correct. So that's a time when they probably should move or get care in the home, which can drive them around. I mean, caregivers most of them are licensed, bonded, background checked, and driver checked even.
Right.
And so they can take them. They can take them to the movies. They can take them to the ballpark. They can take them to see their grandchildren. Whatever is needed, a caregiver could do that. But again, a lot of times someone has to move so that they meet people.
Right.
And that's when it's kind of like I'm a real estate broker.
Yeah.
Not quite, because I'm not licensed.
Yeah, right.
But I'm helping someone move from one living situation into another.
Right.
That's what I do.
So, while I'm kind of here, I'm a senior real estate specialist. So one of the things.
Thank you for earning that title, because it's very important in these days.
And it's so kind of another world. It's you would think that oh, they're buildings. you just sell the building and it goes into this. But there's so much more in terms of caring for folks on a much higher level. But one of the things that kind of surprised me, I kind of knew this before I got the designation, but the spectrum of where folks can go, you know what I mean? I mean, it literally goes from retirement communities all the way to, the homes where they are
memory care,
where they're literally
skilled nursing,
where they're taken completely care of. You know what I mean? Why don't you go through each of those phases just so folks can understand all those different steps along the spectrum?
Okay. So when you're moving into any kind of senior living, a lot of people have heard of 55 plus is a famous one. And those are independent buildings.
Yeah.
Okay. Usually all they are is houses or apartments that have maybe a little more access in the bathroom. They're not 2 stories as a rule. They're 1 stories. They may have conference rooms or playrooms, but they usually don't provide any services for people. So basically someone's moving from their house into a community where there's people 55 or older, but they're all of different levels of activity.
Right.
And sometimes that's not good because they're not getting any help.
Right.
Sometimes it's good because there are people.
Right.
That would be the first step.
Right.
Okay.
And by the way, that was my parents moved into one, and they were there in Sun Lakes out in Banning, and I think it gave them. My mom was never much of a social butterfly anyway, but she found more kind of there, like folks next door, and and it's kind of the 55 and over is not just about an age. They also have, at least in Sun Lakes, I can't speak for every other place, but they've geared like certain things. They've thought ahead about how folks with disabilities can get around their house, like you said, like no tripping hazards and things like that, and to make things a bit easier. But it's not. But it's still completely, aging in place, independent.
Right. It's independent, aging in place. So the next step would be what you call independent living. Here in Southern California, we have a lot of great places that have independent living only.
Right.
They don't have assisted living. All they have is independent living.
Right.
And now the difference between that and a 55 and a 55 would be you'd be in an apartment style place, but they would serve anywhere from 1, 2, or 3 meals a day.
Got it.
Okay, you could have a choice.
So it's not like a completely taking over their responsibilities.
And you would have a kitchen with a stove.
Right.
Okay. That would be an independent living. And then they have educational stuff. They have entertainment. They have cocktail parties. They have outings.
Right.
They have a nurse. They may have actually a nurse on staff. Usually it'll only be during the day, maybe 9 to 5 or 8 to 6 or whatever.
Right.
And that would be independent. So if you needed any help, you have to actually hire it on your own.
Got it.
They don't really have caregivers available. So that would be independent living. Okay?
Right.
And you can have a stove there.
Right.
When you switch to assisted living,
yes,
many times the only difference is the stove.
Really? That's the subtle difference.
It's possible, but it's in a sense it is. But in assisted living in the state of California, and they're all licensed. Most of these places that I deal with are all licensed. There you'll get 3 meals a day.
Okay.
They will clean your room once a week.
Okay.
They will do your laundry.
Right.
They will provide all your entertainment. They will drive you to the doctor.
Okay.
They will go on outings.
Right.
They will bring your packages to your room. Instead of you're going down and get the mailbox, the big packages will be delivered to your room, no charge. So that would be assisted living. Now, you could be independent and living in assisted living. The difference is in assisted living, there'd be caregivers.
Okay.
And the caregivers you could contract through the company, and they could take care of you. And I'll give you an example. You could get showering, standby showering, which would just be maybe one person coming into the room, making sure you don't fall while you take your own shower. That would cost maybe $125 a month for 2 showers a week.
Okay.
So that's kind of the cost involved there.
Got it.
And then you can obviously get more care. You can have medication management. You can have help walking. You can help getting dressed. Basically, assisted living helps people do the activities of daily living, which are transferring, toileting, grooming, eating, walking. So those are the activities of daily living.
Right.
It has nothing to do with medical. In other words, you're not getting any medical care. Okay, so that would be assisted living. Now you could be independent and living in assisted, and you almost can be in an assisted state and live in independent, because it's only a question of whether or not you want to hire the people
to come in
privately.
Got it.
Or it's provided in the building.
Got it.
And then the next step after that would be memory care, and that people would go to memory care when they're a risk of wandering with dementia.
Right.
But a lot of times someone could have dementia and not be in memory care.
Okay.
So that's the last step. Then the next step is more medical. That would be skilled nursing, and that's covered by your health insurance. And that's the word nursing home, skilled nursing facilities, we call them now. SNFs, SNFs. That's where you would go. But that's usually short term.
Right.
So that's the stages. And then, of course, now there's board and cares. Or they're called residential.
What is that?
Residential homes.
Okay. Okay, got it.
Residential homes. They're in LA. They're called 6-packs. Okay,
because there's 6 beds.
You can have a maximum of 6 people living in the house in a residential area. All the other places are in commercial areas.
Right.
So you actually have a quieter setting with the board and cares than you do anything. But there again, you only have 6 people in the house. You're not getting a lot of entertainment.
Yeah.
And the food's great, because they literally make anything you want,
right?
And then so those are the different.
When you bring up the assisted living and those kind of places, I think that there's this kind of misconception about how gosh, I don't want to move into one of those places because it's I'm basically gonna stare at a wall for 24/7, and it's really it's so not true. So it's go into that and how it's really
there are so many activities at these places.
But you do agree that that's kind of like the idea that folks have.
A lot of people do it. And I think a lot of it has to do with the age of our seniors now. And seniors, to me, are the greatest generation right now. They're not the baby boomers who are 60 to 70.
Right.
The seniors are really the people that lived before World War I.
Right.
World War
and that
II,
age is getting older nowadays.
It's getting older. We're obviously living longer, right?
Yeah.
So, so the issue of, first of all, it's not an age issue. It's a health issue. It's a rule.
Go into that.
Well, in other words, you can have a 95-year-old that's walking, can hear correctly, has no dementia, and can take care of himself. And you can have a 71-year-old that is wheelchair bound and doesn't know which meds they're taking.
Right.
So one could live in independent at 98.
Yep.
And so that's the big difference between the two.
Right.
And I forgot the first question that you asked me before that.
Well, which was?
I don't even remember what it was.
Well, no, I was asking about how, the misperception of the assisted living is kind of like one step towards death.
At my age, memory is really short. Actually, so that's an interesting thing. So up until around 1990, the perception of senior homes was these big dark buildings with bars on them, with Nurse Ratched.
Yeah, keeping them all in.
Yeah. And up until about 1990, that's what it was.
So you think there was some truth to it?
I think that generation has seen the change. And around 1990, they figured out that the boomers and the greatest generation were going to need something more. A bit more. And so these places have tremendous amount of activities. A lot of people call them cruise ships without water, because basically you can get a lot of services, no charge.
Right.
And by the way, the independence of you is an issue. You don't have to go to anything.
Right.
You don't have to eat 3 meals a day. You don't have to go to bingo. You do not have to play Wii bowling. You do not have to go to the book club. You don't have to go walking. You don't have to see 2 movies a day.
Yeah.
Yes, some places actually have 2 movies, setting 2 specific times for movies.
Nice.
And a lot of them have stadium chairs and popcorn and everything like that. So so it is like a cruise ship without water.
Yeah.
So it's great. It's great living, and obviously it's a question of socialization.
Yeah.
So visualize a woman who's lost her husband, and now she's sitting in her home all alone, and she can't drive anymore. She can't get out.
Yeah.
Now she moves into a building with 100 people.
Well, and I know that even with my parents, there was a perception of they felt like they were giving up their independence. That's huge. You know what I mean? Like they didn't want someone to be driving them around. They didn't want someone, saying whether or not they could go someplace or not. My dad still thinks to this day he can drive. And
Correct.
I drove with him a year ago, and I don't ever want to do that again. So what do you do with those kind of situations where it's like, well, while we're here, I think that has a lot to do with what I was going to say on the other side of the coin, where it's someone else who's contacting you who isn't part of that, couple or that person.
Correct.
How do you deal with those kind of situations? Is it a different situation? I mean, I'm assuming.
I think I'm going to use the word symptoms, even though it's not medical.
Yeah.
The causes of needing to transition. There are many different causes, but I'll give you an example. A grandchild called me up and said, I just visited with my grandmother, and I noticed that the only thing she had in her refrigerator was things in boxes. And I go, really? She said, yes, in the freezer and in the regular refrigerator, everything was in boxes. And I says, that's not healthy. People want to have fresh food.
Yeah.
So that's one sign. Another sign is the place gets a little messier than normal.
Right.
Another sign would be all of a sudden they get a phone call or they get an email or something that the lights are going to be turned off because the bills haven't been paid.
Got it.
So there's different things that would transition in someone's life, and when they start to go awry, that's when someone has to step in. And sometimes it's a grandchild. Sometimes it's a daughter or a son.
Or daughter, yeah.
Sometimes it's a brother or a sister.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's a husband realizing he can't take care of his wife.
Right.
And he just says, I have to move her. And many times he moves her and he stays, and vice versa. That can happen.
Oh,
but
yeah.
sometimes that's the only way to take care of people. It depends on their condition.
Oh, interesting.
Sometimes, most of the time you want to keep someone together.
Right.
But if you have someone that's 85 years old and is healthy, driving, walking, doing his hobbies, and his wife has got full-blown dementia, where she's basically not functioning at all on her own, she needs cueing, maybe it's better for him to have her taken care of by professionals, and then he comes to visit her whenever he wants. And it could be close by. I mean, that's part of my job. If someone lives in Reseda, I don't find a home for them in
Orange County.
Right. And by the way, that's one of the goals of caregiving, is to make sure that family members stay family members.
Right.
So we don't want a daughter becoming a caregiver for her mother. We want the daughter visiting her mother as a daughter, so that the mother knows her daughter is a daughter.
That's such a huge deal. I mean, that's so when you put it that way, it's
it's really important.
It's very easily for when folks are kind of in the middle of it to kind of get lost into I'm the caregiver, and the relationship is kind of secondary almost at that point.
Correct, and it eats up a lot of energy, time, and that's another thing is. The reason you do this sometimes is to protect both people.
Right.
So in other words, let's just assume that the husband is the one that's sick now, right?
Yeah.
And the wife is pretty good.
Yeah.
She's functioning, driving and everything. But the husband, let's say he's bedbound.
Right.
Okay. And he's 6'2", 260 pounds.
Yeah.
And mom is only 5'4", 140. Is she going to be able to lift him if he needs help? So what happens is maybe he'll sit in the bed a little bit longer when he has to go to the bathroom, and then he's sitting in his urine, and that's not good. So so a lot of times we have to figure out what's best for the family, and that's
as a whole.
That's a big thing. And not only saving the I'll use the word the needy person but we're saving the person that's in better condition, because if they're starting to lift people that are heavier than them, then maybe they'll hurt their back. And then
they're going to be screwed up.
And now who's going to take care of them?
Right.
So there's a lot of transitioning going on in families, especially at this age. And obviously we're living longer. And that's why we have to take care of them. These people deserve it. They deserve the dignity to live a decent life.
And I think that kind of leads me really well into the next kind of phase here. And then I was wondering about, so I'm sure that you've run into situations where the person is not as receptive to the idea of finding a new place or being. I mean, I can only imagine. It's like they want to hold on to that kind of last thread of independence that they have.
Right.
How do you how do you find a way to convince them in a way that does kind of uphold their dignity and keep them kind of, you know what I mean? And get them on the side of actually doing it.
Well, I think you have to just accent the positive, and it's you have to show them all the advantages of living in these new places. And they really, I've never had a bad move, what I call a bad move.
Yeah.
I've had one in 7 years. I had one client who moved into a place, and within 2 weeks she moved out. But
really,
but she would have moved out 2 days after she moved in. Also, we just forced her to stay. The children forced her to stay for 2 weeks because they were on vacation.
So, oh wow! Okay.
So she just didn't like it, and to this day she's having a very difficult time wherever she goes, and she's been to a lot of places. So the negative part of that happens, but most of the time people move to these places and they learn that it's a new life. They have new friends. Yeah. And I use this as an example. When people live in assisted living or independent living, they have friends, they sit down, they have dinner with or breakfast or whatever. Let's just say Sally always goes down for breakfast at 9 o'clock, and she's got two friends that she always has breakfast with at 9. Yeah. Well, at 9:05 or 9:10, if she's not downstairs in the dining room, or upstairs if it's upstairs, some of the places are 1, 2, 3 stories tall. Sure. Someone's going to come knocking on her door.
And find out what the heck's going on.
Sally, where are you?
Yeah.
And she'll say, oh, I don't feel so good. Oh, you didn't tell anybody?
Right.
No, I'm just going to be in bed. So their friends would go talk to the people, and they would say, Sally's not coming to breakfast. No. Someone bring her breakfast, and that would be taken care of. So I think that's done a lot. They look after each other. They're all in the same boat. Yeah. And I think that's really helpful.
And I think, it's interesting because one of the things that in one of our conversations, and I think it was a couple of years ago, hit me so strongly. And it was something that I never, ever forgot. And now that I'm kind of dealing with my own elderly parents and my wife's elderly mom and all that, when we came up against this resistance, this kind of like, hey, listen, you got do something now. What really helped was something you had said, which was they should be part of that conversation, or else they're going to have that conversation taken away from them.
Exactly.
Where
You're
they
absolutely right.
literally will not. It will be out of your hands.
You're right.
And that was something you said one time, and it's just so stuck with me.
Right. Yeah.
And go into a little bit about that. I mean, how it's important to have them as part of their own, planner.
Right. You're absolutely right.
And,
so some people say that all of us, as a rule, we spend more time deciding where we're going on vacation than where we're going to live the rest of our lives.
So true.
So, and I'll just use this as an example, and because I was late today, I was on the phone with a client that we've been looking at homes, and the woman had said she wanted to move into a place, and now she's switched gears, and she says, I want to live independently still. And I don't think she can, but so now I have to start a new conversation with the children. And the first thing I said is, did she tell you why?
Right.
And she said no. She says, but she's just being stubborn.
Right.
I said, that's okay. Okay, just tell her that if we don't do what we do now and move her to a place where she needs help, it's going to cost her even more money in the long run.
Right.
Because she's worried about money.
Yeah.
She was worried about money. She was worried about selling her house and having to rent. She wanted to still own her own home and not rent. Because most of your senior care business is rental. Matter of fact, rental, I'm going to bring this up. It's month to month. There are no leases.
Okay.
It's month to month. You can usually get out in 30 days.
Yeah. Okay.
So, and so I said, you got to have this conversation. The conversation should have happened a long time ago.
Right.
Before she fell.
Right.
Which is what generated this whole thing.
And then she could be part of that conversation and make some of her own decisions.
Right. And so that's one of the things, that's what I tell younger people. You got to start having conversations at Thanksgiving, Christmas, Easter, whatever holiday you celebrate, when you're with grandma or mom or dad, you got to have the conversation. What do you see 2 years from now, 5 years from now? Because they see their friends in a wheelchair or in a walker. Maybe they're not. So we got to have that conversation earlier than later. And by the way, that's really a relief for the children and or the spouse or whatever when someone says, this is what I'd like to do.
Yeah.
But I don't want to do it now. that's great.
At least you have some sort of signpost, something to head towards.
Absolutely. So that's a major issue.
And while we're here, you're talking about money and how that's kind of a big part of it. I mean, look, there are some folks who don't exactly plan well for this.
Correct.
And they really haven't taken care of how to handle financially, basically being in one of these places.
Correct.
So I guess this is what options do folks have? Like let's start with, so you can basically, if they own a home, and I want to get into how you kind of assist folks, because this is a real estate podcast, how you help folks when it comes to that phase where they're going to sell their home and make this move. But let's say that they don't have a home and they have very limited funds. What kind of options do they have?
Well, there's a lot of options, but none of them are good. Yeah. When you don't have a lot of money. But let me just say that when you say money, the real issue is just like it's like buying a car or buying a home.
Right.
You can buy a home for $400,000 and you can buy a home for $1 million on the same street. Okay.
I wouldn't, but
well, however, if someone can afford the $1 million home,
yes,
they're going to live there. If they can't afford the $1 million home and they can only afford $400,000, then they're going to move into the $400,000. Well, with senior living, it's the same thing. You can get senior living anywhere from, on the really, 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 really low side, $2,000 a month.
Yeah.
And then you can go up as high as you want, depending on what you're in. In the San Fernando Valley, the biggest 2-bedroom apartments probably run, maybe the most expensive is maybe $12,000 a month.
Wow.
But remember, that's including everything except
food,
medical care.
Yeah. Oh, except medical care.
Yeah. So that's the difference. Senior living has nothing to do with medical. Your medical is covered by your insurance, or in the case of seniors, it's usually Medicare or Medi-Cal.
Right.
Okay. And that covers all your doctors and nurses and hospital visits and skilled nursing. Okay. Anything after that, assisted living, independent living, board and care, even memory care, that's all private pay.
Got it.
So you have to pay out of your pocket. One way to do that is obviously use income. Another way would be to use savings. Another way would be you can get a VA benefit. You could get there's a VA benefit called the aid and attendance that will help people that served in our during war, and they can get it. But health insurance doesn't cover it. Long-term care insurance does.
Go into a little bit about that, because that was something that in previous conversations that you have emphasized how important that is. Yeah. Talk a little bit about what it is and like why it's so important.
Well, long-term care insurance is a type of insurance that you go to an insurance company and you tell them, when I need help, I'm going to need more money to live on, and I don't think I have it myself, and so I want to buy insurance to get that help. So what you would do is you would go and decide how much a day you need to pay either all or part of your room rent. As that's called. You could call it your rent, your monthly rent.
Right.
It could be $200 a day. It could be $100 a day. It could be $500 a day. Depends on the place you go to. And then the insurance company would tell you how much it costs you to buy that. Okay, and then it's just like a life insurance policy, except you collect it while you're alive.
Got it.
In a sense.
Right.
I'm not an insurance person, so I don't want to say that.
No. But
so you would, and then once you're ready to make a claim, usually there's a waiting period of about 90 days.
Oh, really?
Yeah, which you can get it with less than 90 days, but most people take it that way. And so you have to wait until you've used 90 days worth of care. And a lot of policies, that only may mean 1 hour a day.
Okay.
Some could be more, and then once you hit the 90 days, then they start paying your bill.
Got it.
Up to X amount of dollars, whatever you arrange for. So it's a very important thing. I always tell people that long-term care insurance is one of the few insurances you almost surely will always collect on.
Right.
Because most people don't die fast.
Right.
And I know a lot of people that don't even know anybody that's lost a house in a fire, which no one would ever think about not having fire insurance.
Right, it's so true. Well,
but as a real estate broker, you know that.
Well, and the lender won't let you have it without it because.
But if you own your home, you don't have to have you don't have to have fire insurance. But who would own
Everybody
$1
would
million
have-
home, they would always buy the insurance.
Everybody would have fire
So
insurance.
long-term care is kind of like that. So people can buy it. It's not.
Yeah. Is there any kind of prerequisite in terms like you have to have it for 10 years before you use it or something
No,
like that?
usually there's some sort of waiting period.
Yeah.
But you're paying forever. You can make policies where you can pay it like a lump sum, but most people just pay it by.
So even while you're making claim on it?
No. Once you start making a claim, you don't have to pay anymore.
Oh, okay, got it.
That's the beauty of it.
Okay, yeah.
So long-term care insurance is very important for people that don't have a lot of money.
Right.
The middle class, I'd say. People that have lots and lots of money. Then another way to obviously pay for care and assisted living or independent living would be to sell your home. And this is where I come in with a family. Many times I'm in there talking to them long before a realtor is.
Right.
And so what I'm trying to explain to them is if they don't have enough money, the reasons for them to sell their house, for sure.
Yeah.
Right. And then, but they'll say, well, how much am I going to get? I'm no real estate broker, but I kind of know the rules. I know how much it costs to sell a house, what to do, fix it up. And then I can tell them, well, you're going to have this much amount of money. And let's say you're going to end up with $300,000. And
as a net at the end of the day.
At the end of the day.
Yeah.
And let's say you looked at a room and it's $3,000. I can know that I can.
How long is that amortized for?
That's 100 months.
Yeah.
Right. 9 years. Okay?
Right.
So I kind of do that for people just to give them a rough idea. I'm not a financial advisor. I always refer to the financial advisors just like I would to a realtor. I don't try to sell their home.
Sure.
But a lot of times I'm in there and with care, we're providing care for somebody.
Yeah.
And we can see the progression. And sooner or later, they're going to have to move out of their house. Yep. That's when I would call a realtor and say, you need to come in here and talk to these people and explain to them a little chat. And many times, the realtors are the ones that actually help them find reverse mortgages.
Right.
The realtor comes in first.
Yeah.
And then tells them their story. And then sometimes they say, well, I really don't want to leave the house. Well, if you don't want to leave your house, then the realtor says, well, I know somebody that's a specialist in reverse mortgages, which you're allowed to do it over 62.
Right. So if so while we're talking about when it comes time to sell their house, how involved are you in terms of I guess you tell them, hey, you probably want to get an agent in here or whatever, but are you involved in any other ways in helping assist them? Like I know that we both have some friends here that, Ted Cotter, who's an amazing mover, right. Dina Newman, who was just on our last podcast.
Oh, really? Dina's great.
Dina's fantastic as an organizer. And
Ted Cotter, Inside Moves, just moved a lady for me on Saturday.
Yeah.
And it was a great move. They're people are really good.
Yeah, he does an amazing job. It really has a focus towards how to deal with the aging and the elderly, which is, whenever that you have that kind of extra level of expertise, it's always a bonus. So how else do you get involved in terms of, is there anything else other than kind of referring to people, or is
I'm referring to people? Like I say, I think I'm using my coach terms.
Yeah.
I'm going to tell them, I think you should use a downsizer. You may need an appraiser, a sale person. There's a lot of stuff that is going to have to be donated.
Yeah.
But really, I think for me, it's a little more of a timing issue. I'm trying to get them into the right timing frame so that everything is done correctly. Right. And I'll give you an example. No one should be selling their home and then moving into an assisted living. They should be deciding on which assisted living they want to live in.
And that's huge, by the way. I think that's incredibly huge.
Correct.
Because, and I think that's something that people don't kind of think about, but makes total sense, is that these places, for the most part, are usually pretty full.
Correct. And
beds have to empty. If you know what I mean.
They do empty. People move out. A lot of people, let's address that. The big elephant in the room. People move out for many reasons.
Yes.
They move out because they can't afford the place they moved into.
Right.
They move out because they want to be closer to their children.
Sure.
They move out because they need a higher level of care.
Sure.
They
absolutely.
move out because they need memory care and the place doesn't offer memory care. Sure. They move out because they die. There's a lot of other reasons why people move out.
Sure.
But rooms do come available.
Yes.
But
having a plan for that. So
having a plan is good.
Even as an agent working with able-bodied younger folks who are homeowners, right? You have to kind of part of what you're doing is playing, air traffic controller and making sure that the planes all land where they're supposed to land when they're supposed to land.
Right.
Especially, if if they have to pick another house someplace else, you want to make sure that there's a contingency that's inside this, so that everybody goes and move. And the more that you plan as part of as a head, like what I think you're talking about, not that you sell your house and then all of a sudden I'm on the street and there isn't any place open for me. You could be waiting a while.
If you don't plan, you plan to fail.
Right. Yeah.
So you're absolutely right. So many times I get involved with the realtors, with the downsizers, and try to plan a whole, could be 3 months or 6 months, it could be a year plan.
Yeah.
To help someone eventually transition,
to make that transition, a natural, organic transition. And
another thing I tell people is it's just like buying a house or moving into an assisted living. Sometimes everyone looks at what the room looks like.
Mm-hmm.
The room isn't the important thing. The house is the important thing.
Right.
And in the case of assisted living, the room isn't the important thing. It's the building. It's the people that are going to take care of you. It's the food. It's the entertainment. So what happens is I try to get people to focus on the right stuff so that they may not like the room that they see, but they like the place. Well, if they're in crisis and they have to get the room to next week, they may have to live in a room that they don't like.
It's at that point.
So that's why you want to plan in advance. Once you know
the wheel of fortune has landed on a certain slot.
Once you know where you want to move, then you just got to figure out when the right room comes up. Maybe that's the time to move.
Yeah.
But there's something about assisted living that they do. Once you move into the building, when a room comes available, usually the people in the building have first choice to get it. So if someone wanted a 2-bedroom, there were none available, but they love the place, I tell them move into the 1-bedroom temporarily.
Oh, really?
And then as soon as
because it's month to month, right?
It's month to month, and as soon as the 2-bedrooms comes out, you're on the top of the list.
Oh, interesting. That's a great strategy.
Yeah. So that works. It's I don't even know if the real estate people can you do that? Are you allowed to give someone first right of refusal if they put a bid in? I don't know how that all works.
It's kind of an awkward. I actually literally just had some very similar situation. You can get all sorts of weird conflict of interest and stuff like that. Yeah. So it gets kind of weird. But so let me ask, as we're kind of closing up here. Right. Let's say I'm getting in my years. I'm not as young as I used to be. Sandy.
Correct. Yeah, with twins.
Twins, no less.
Yeah.
We're aging me.
Thank you.
Every day.
Thank you.
But let's say in about another 10 years, when I'm hitting my almost 60, what should I be doing? What would you be advising?
Well,
the 6-year-old, or would you say it's even too young at that point?
The first thing I'd be saying is make sure you have all your legal paperwork done.
So go into that. So you're talking about, like, I'm assuming wills, trusts, that kind of thing.
Wills, trusts, powers of attorney.
Got it.
Very important.
Well, my wife, who is an estate attorney, so she's been on the podcast, and we know how important that is.
So you know that. So I think the powers of attorney are extremely important.
Yep.
Also, I think streamlining.
Explain just so as a reminder, everybody, explain the powers of attorney.
Powers of attorney is a husband and wife. Let's use a husband and wife.
Yeah.
You're and your wife. If you were to become incapacitated, your wife could make decisions for you.
Yep.
Basically, there's 2 of them. One of them is medical, and one of them is financial.
Yep.
Okay. So, and you can have different ones.
Yeah.
So in the case of me and my age, I have my wife as power of attorney, but my backup are my children.
Okay.
So because at my age, I'm old, so I could, So those are really important. By the way, just as only because I'm on the power of attorney kick here, it's really important that people know that anyone over 18 years old, if they're your children and they're away at college, theoretically the hospital doesn't have to talk to you if they're in the hospital for an accident or something.
Oh, wow.
So you should have a power of attorney over your 18-year-old.
And that is something that people don't talk about.
They don't talk about that at all. It doesn't cost that much to do.
No.
And you should have powers of attorney in place all the time. Right. So at your age, I would start thinking about long-term care insurance. You're young enough now where you could get it. Have all your legal paperwork done. And then kind of just try to visualize your economics if you can. and how far out. The good news is you're going to live a long time.
Yeah.
The bad news is it's going to cost more money
To do that.
every year.
Yeah.
So it's important to understand that long-term care insurances do have. You can add a 5. I think it's a 5%, but don't quote me on that. But you can add inflation riders.
Oh,
So
really?
at least you'll keep up with inflation. So you may start off a policy that's $100 a day,
Right.
and after 20 years, it's going to be $100 a day plus 5% plus 5%.
Oh, that makes
and
so
it
much
compounds,
sense. So.
And it can compound. So that would be something to look at. And then as you get older, and I did this, I downsized from a 2-story large home
Yeah.
to a 1-story, very small home.
Yeah.
1 step, no backyard,
Yeah.
no swimming pool.
I got a story about that.
Easy to take care of.
My parents, I got married. Well, this is. Let's just talk about this house. So back in 2009, when I bought this house, my mom and dad have never seen the second floor of my house. Right? I mean, literally, they can't get up the stairs.
Right, exactly.
And so it was incredibly important for them to be in a place that it was, conducive to not having to do like a lot of climbing and
Correct.
a lot of just, and when you see folks even searching for homes in their 40s, 50s, and all that, if they're, it's you almost don't want to bring it up because it's sort of like, hey, I hate to bring up this morbid, kind of conversation, but this is a 2-story. How long are you planning on staying in this house? Because
Right.
you could, if you're going to say 30
Right.
years, 20, 30 years, you might want to have a conversation if there's more than 1 floor.
Correct.
I mean, it's so true.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And transitions is where people fall.
Yeah.
So it would be falling, going up and down the stairs,
Yeah.
getting on and off a toilet, getting in and out of a car.
Yeah.
So you want to eliminate as much of that as you can. You're absolutely right.
So let's, before we go, because this was something that whenever we'd usually go to these networking meetings and you would be there and you'd give these really great kind of advice, little tidbits each day, kind of each time you'd say, hey, if this is in your house, you should be thinking about doing this kind of thing.
Right.
What are your top 5 things that you should be like telling folks who are aging, like what they should be looking out for in terms of like, safety issues in their house?
Safety issues in the house. I think throw rugs is a big issue.
That makes so much sense. Yeah.
And rugs in the bathroom.
Yeah.
And even the bathroom, even the shower things, making sure they're sturdy, because slipping is a big issue.
Sure.
So that's one.
Like some sort of traction on the bottom or something? Okay.
Also, shoes is a big thing. Flip-flop, as people get older, flip-flops are not good shoes.
Oh, okay.
So what many times I will see a senior shuffling around the floor in
like slippers? Yeah.
And they get caught on things and they miss a step.
Oh, wow.
And so many times I start talking to the family members about tie shoes or Velcro shoes with heels so that they can, so that's
get some sort of traction.
Another thing. And then of course, moving furniture out of the way, moving things that don't belong there, moving the treadmill that hasn't been used in 30 years. It's only been used as a clothes hanger.
Right.
Get that out of the room.
By the way, you are the second person in a week to bring up my damn treadmill, Sandy.
Okay.
Are you inside my house? Do you see the treadmill and
No, I've not been in your
used?
side house, but we are.
I think everybody knows.
We are
about
both full-figured. Okay. So, but yeah, so that would be another thing, and then
because Dina was going on about it for.
Dina's very good at that.
She's
good.
like.
And then simplifying paperwork. Getting down.
Oh, interesting. Like, what do you mean by that?
I'm just thinking, getting down. You don't need three or four checking accounts, whether you think you need it or not. It's usually unnecessary unless you're in.
It's just more stuff to get confused.
Just more stuff to get confused as you get older.
Oh,
so that's something that I look at. And downsizing stuff is always a healthy thing. Cleaner, and you know this from a real estate point of view. A cluttered house is a harder house to sell than a house that's staged correctly and everything. So seniors need to get rid of some things. And the way to get rid of things is not necessarily just give them away. When the children, grandchildren come to the house, it's not even getting rid of them. It's making the decision. They see a painting on the wall and they go, "Grandma, I love that painting." Grandma says, "Really? It's yours." And someone writes that down or puts a Post-it on the back of the picture and says,
it's going to that
granddaughter gets that.
Yeah.
A lot of the decisions are done.
Yeah.
So that's some of the things that I help people.
Yeah, and speaking of really quickly about clutter, and I brought this up with Dina as well, is that a lot of folks don't realize when we hear the word staging, it's about 80% getting rid of stuff, not bringing in furniture, not bringing in stuff. It's really about taking stuff off walls.
Correct. So it's one of the things that I try to get people to understand is a lot of the seniors say, I'm not moving until I sell my house.
Yeah.
And I go, no. You want to move before you sell the house.
Right.
And they go, why? So that you're not in the house when the realtor is showing the house.
Yep.
You want your house to look great. The people that are going to buy the house don't want to see an older person sitting in a lounge chair with soda spilled on his shirt.
On the armchair.
On the armchair. So it kind of makes...
And also it's about access.
Correct.
Because for real estate agents, access is so important.
Right.
If you're inside that house and you restrict the amount of hours that we can be in there,
absolutely,
selling that house, it's like a millstone around our neck.
Right. Yeah.
And you don't want to do that. You want to get the highest net for your property that you possibly can.
Exactly right.
So
another thing I do with them is get them to understand that they don't have to be there when new construction or add-ons or painting has to be done.
Right.
They don't need to be there. As a matter of fact, they shouldn't be there.
If they're not.
It's better if they're not. So, it's hard. Transitions are hard. And you're talking about someone may have been living in their house 40, 50, 60 years, giving it up. But I will tell you, and because it just happened Saturday, Inside Move, we arrange, and this is what I did, at 8 o'clock, Inside Move shows up at the house.
That's Ted's company, just so everybody knows. Ted Cotter's.
And I had the children take their mother out for breakfast, and then they took her to the Reagan Museum.
Okay.
And then they went out to lunch. And by the time she got to the community around 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock,
she was like,
her room, which was incredible, was completely done.
Wow.
All the pictures were hung.
Wow.
Everything was done. She walked in, literally, she said, oh my God, it's my house.
Yep.
And it was 1/4, not even 1/4. It was 1/7 of the size of the house she was in.
But it felt like it because
she had all her furniture. It was all her furniture. It was all her stuff, all her new stuff. And she had downsized before with a downsizer, like Dina, taking out all the clothing that she really didn't need, the jewelry that she didn't need, and the shoes and whatever it is. And it was great, So it was a really great move, and that's why you don't want people in the house if you can help it.
Well, that's great. Well, Sandy, thank you so much for coming.
My pleasure.
I mean, seriously, if anybody is going through any kind of this kind of situation where they've got elderly parents or even grandparents or whatever, and they're looking for any kind of guidance, I have to tell you, without any kind of hesitation, Sandy is a wealth of knowledge, and he can help in any of those kinds of situations, and you should definitely be giving him a phone call. Sandy, why don't you go ahead and give us your contact information so everybody has it?
Okay, the name of my company is Senior Resources, Inc., and my phone number is 818-359-2125, and that's my cell phone. You can get me anytime you want. And I'm no charge to my clients. I absolutely do not collect money.
Well, that's another thing that people don't really understand. I wasn't going to go. But tell them a little bit about, just really briefly, how that works.
I'm with my clients for free. They don't pay me an hourly rate or anything. If I move somebody, I get paid a referral fee for moving them. If I get a caregiver for them, I get paid a referral fee for the caregiving.
Yeah.
So I'm basically with people, and the age group that I'm dealing with, trust me, when you tell them that it's for free, they'll listen to you and talk to you, and that's how I get access. So, I'm available to anybody 24/7.
Give them your website.
Website is www.seniorresourcesca.com. That's seniorresourcescalifornia.com. CA.com. And my phone number is 818-359-2125. I'm available any time of the day, except when I'm playing with my grandson twins. My two grandsons.
We have twins in common. Except
we do have twins in common.
You're a grandpa and I'm daddy.
Thank you.
Well, Sandy, thank you so much for coming.
My pleasure. It was an honor.
Awesome. Well, that's about it for today. If you have any questions or comments, please don't hesitate to leave them for us on our Facebook page, facebook.com/Clarified Realty Podcast, all one word. If you have any questions about real estate or you're looking for, someone to help you buy or sell a home, remember, I'm actually a licensed real estate agent. I'd love to help you out. So please email me directly at tom@clarifiedrealty.com or give me a call at 818-335-7662. Don't be shy, guys. Come on, give me a ring. And for more exclusive bonus content and advice between episodes, please check out our website, www.clarifiedrealty.com. Also on our homepage, you'll find links to helpful buyer and seller guides that can give you some really great information for starting your home buying or home seller process. So definitely check those out. Here's something we're really proud of. We have a top-ranked Alexa skill. So search the Alexa store for the Clarified Realty Podcast, add our skill to your daily briefing, and get a dose of real estate news and tips every day of the year. That's every day of the year. Definitely give it a try. It's pretty cool. I'm on Snapchat, Twitter, and Instagram as well. My handle for all three of those are @Clarified Realty. Please leave feedback and reviews on iTunes or in the comments section on our page. Together we're stronger, so if you have any questions or ways that we can make this podcast better, please let us know. My amazing theme song, Hey Now, is from the band Wolf. That's Wolf with 2 Fs. And please go check them out and like them on SoundCloud. And just a little fine print here. My brokerage is Keller Williams Encino Sherman Oaks. I'm licensed by the California Bureau of Real Estate, and my license number is 0171-5353. The advice we give is only for this. I'm all right, Sandy. I swear to God. He's looking at me. He doesn't know. The advice we give is only for the properties located in the state of California. For all other states, please contact your local real estate agent or real estate professional. Thanks for coming, everybody. I'll make it through, I swear. It's almost time for the weekend. And remember, the greatest thing you can ever do is make someone feel at home. Take care. We'll see you next week.
What you gonna do with your life?